Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and happy National Family History Month if you are in Australia or New Zealand, although National Family History Month is quickly coming to an end, and I'm kind of sad about that because I've had so much fun this month creating content over on my blog, over on my Uncovering Family History socials, and I've also been participating in some online events. So that's been really fun. In the description I will leave a link to the genealogy tag on my blog, so you can not only check out all of the posts that have gone up during August but also all my previous posts. I definitely recommend checking them all out. Plus I'll also link to my Uncovering Family History podcast and connected socials. And yeah, I think that is it. So today I'm actually updating a video that I've done previously, and it is actually my second most watched video on my channel, which is crazy. So I posted the video recording my family history flip through in March 2019. And as I said, it is currently my second most viewed video on this channel with 6.8 thousand views, and it is still getting views to this day. Literally, my analytics according to the last 28 days show that it has had 433 views just in the last month. As I said, I have not reshared that video since 2019, and I am seriously always blown away by how many views it constantly gets. So I thought I would update the video and show you guys what my physical family history collection looks like. Whoa, this is so heavy. This is what most of my physical family history collection looks like. All of these different colored folders, and I've got to hold these differently. All of these different colored folders correspond to a different branch of my family tree. I've color coded every single branch, and I really like that I've done that because it's just so helpful, and everything that I do relating to each branch gets its own color, and it's a really great color association. For the purpose of this video though, I'm only going to show you guys my yellow and orange folders because oh, I've got to put these down. For the purposes of this video, however, I'm only going to be showing you guys my orange and yellow folders because I'm currently in the process of revamping and updating what my physical tree and collection looks like, because I kind of went into this, and you will see in my previous video, I kind of went into this just sort of throwing as much crap as possible in these folders, and at the end of the day, it's not necessarily all stuff that I need physically. The idea with my physical folders is, one, I want them to be really easy to follow and access for myself, but also for my family. I tend to drag these with me everywhere when we have family reunions, and so family members flip through them, and I want to make it also really easy for them when flipping through it and not getting lost in heaps of random crap. And I want to make it so that all of the original documents are really easy to decipher and read and understand. And I've also trimmed back how I display my physical tree. So like probably a lot of you, I have a ton of stuff saved on my computer on my hard drive. I have a family history folder that is broken down into my two parents on my maternal and paternal side, and then broken down further into the different branches. I feel like one day I will do like a digital tree collection video. I have been meaning to do that since 2019, and it's 2022 and I still haven't done it. But I definitely will try to aim to do that at some point. So I have a bunch of stuff, like thousands upon thousands of files saved on my hard drive. I also have a tree on Ancestry that has, you know, hundreds, maybe thousands of documents saved on that as well, that are also saved on my hard drive. And so I didn't really want my physical tree to be that big and that expansive when some of my branches like branch out heaps, and it's so easy to get lost. So in doing my physical trees, I have really tried to keep the branches quite direct and straightforward, and really only branching out about 3 or 4 generations back from me. There's no real like hard and fast rule about where I've chosen to do that. It just depends on stories I know, connections that I know other family members have, and just, yeah. It just felt like the natural place to branch out with like my grandparents, great-grandparents, and even my great-great-grandparents' siblings. So now let's dive into a bit of a flip through so you can see up close what is in these folders and how I've done it. Okay, this is the shiny yellow folder. When we open it up, we have here an ancestral relationship chart. Super handy to have. Would recommend having one in every one of your folders in your collection somewhere. I don't really know, just have a couple. They're very helpful, particularly once you know how to use them. So then this is the cover page. It just really explicitly says which surnames and which branches I am following. Rudder, Shutter, Rudder, Sharp, Gosper. Funnily enough though, the folder isn't in that order, but that's fine. So then one of the things I really wanted to do to start this folder is because the previous iteration of this folder just opened up straight onto a group record like this. So that's why I wanted to add the title page, but then I also wanted to put in a way to show what is actually in this folder. And I saw someone else do this. I don't know if it was on Instagram, on Twitter, or on Pinterest, but I saw someone do a very basic pedigree chart like this that shows specifically what is going to be in this folder. So obviously we start down here with me, my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, and then we follow the different branches. So we have the Rutter side here, the Sharp side here, and the Gosper side here. And as you can see here, at no point am I following England in this folder, or even Winslade. I'm not following Davis or Penton either, or Goodwin. It's very much just showing the one direct line that I'm following. You know, at some point in the future, I might decide to be following these other lines, either in this folder or in another folder, but I really liked that this was a good little quick introduction of who is in here, the direct line associated with me, and how far back I also go. So then we get into the actual family history. So each person here gets a group record, a family group record. So obviously we have Henry and Mary, husband and wife, and they had 7 children. And as you can tell by the highlights, obviously Henry and Mary are my direct line, and I am descended from their son, Robert. And obviously this has quite a lot of information, a lot of blanks because I don't necessarily have that information, but each group record essentially has birth, christening, marriage to the person in this specific record, when they died, where they were buried, and when they were buried. There is information for the city, state, and country for all of these different life events, the cemetery in which they were buried. I then have up here a little spot for military information, the name of the church in which they were christened, the name of the church in which they were married, their cause of death, and the date that their will was written or proven. At the top here is also a little spot for religion and a little box for their occupations. And then there is another section for other wives or other husbands, depending on obviously where you are. And then there's also a spot to list their mother and father. Obviously, I don't know who Henry or Mary's parents are, what they're called. And then we have all of their children. So obviously for the children, you mark down the gender, their first and middle name, because obviously most of the time they're going to take on their father's surname. The day, month, and year that they were born, the city, state, and country in which they were born. And then we have, this column is about marriage, so the date of their first marriage and who their first spouse was. And then the date that they died and the location in which they died. And then this is the to chart, which I haven't filled in for any of them because I haven't started numbering, but up the top you can see here there is ancestral chart number and family unit number. When I finally get round to putting them in against everyone, this will then say where their what chart number their information goes to. So then behind each group record is information, except in this case in which I actually have the next group record. So this is Robert. This is Robert, the Robert we met on this previous page, him and his wife Elizabeth, and so it's their information. So behind each record is all of the information specifically about the husband and wife duo in the family group record. So all of the information behind the group record is about that family, predominantly the husband and wife. It will also include any sources in which multiple children have been referenced, so therefore I'm not putting them, multiple copies in a folder. I can just have one copy in one location and it covers everyone. Information can also include things for children who maybe died young, and I don't really need to do a group record for them, unless of course they have like a lot of information, a lot of sources and stuff about them. I'll give them a group record for themselves. And any just children that I know very little about. So I better turn this back this way. So obviously, as I said, this is Robert and Elizabeth and their sources. So obviously we have the 1841 census, the 1851 census, their New South Wales assisted immigrant passenger list from 1855 on the ship Constitution. And as you can see, I highlight everything in the colour that corresponds with the branch. So every time they are mentioned on a document, it gets highlighted yellow in this case. This is the New South Wales immigrant passenger list. This is all different newspaper articles. I try my hardest to try and put as many as I can on one sheet of paper, so then I'm making the most out of that page before I print it. And so some will be in landscape, some will be in portrait. It depends on the size and shape of the articles. So here we have like shipping arrivals, probate notice for Elizabeth. These are sort of in chronological order, but they might not necessarily be in chronological order against the whole, all of the documents in this one section. So then we move on to the next person. Now you're probably wondering, how is she, what's the method to my madness here? So essentially, let me go back to this first one just because it's sitting properly. So the way that this folder is set up, we obviously have the first person that this whole record is about, and then we start going down their list of children. Obviously this is just an example because we skip straight to Robert because we skip straight to Robert. But essentially, once you have this record for the husband and wife and all of their information, you then go on to their first child. And you would follow, you'd have all of her information and then all of her children and grandchildren, her line, and you'd follow that straight down until you ran out of people. And then you would come back and you would do, for in this case, Susan, and you'd follow her line all the way down until you ran out of people. And then you come back and you do Robert. And do all of that line. So that would be the line that I'm in. It would go all the way down past me to my cousin's children and any other descendants from like other siblings within Robert's branch. And then we'd come all the way back to Mary and we'd keep going down that way. So in this case, we had Robert and Elizabeth, and I'm descended from William, but the next person that we see group record from is Henry. And then we come back down and do David, we come back and do William. So let me just catch up to where we were. So here we have Henry and his wife Mary. I've highlighted where my direct line is in his father Robert. We've got information on them. And then who have we got here? James and Sarah. Oh, here. So then we come on to James and Sarah, and James and Sarah are actually, is actually the fourth child here. And we follow James and Sarah down. And then the person after them is Daniel Charles, who is the eighth son here. It makes sense when you start putting it all together, the way this works, it makes sense. So then we come back up to David, who is Robert's son. So that was the sibling to Henry. And we do his information. One of the things I really liked doing was, obviously the newspaper articles are just all basically like shoved on one page, except for when it came to really important articles like obituaries, marriages, and just really big things. And so what I've done with those articles is also include the title section of that day's newspaper with the title of the newspaper and the date. I got this idea because this is what they do on Who Do You Think You Are? If you've seen the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. When the celebrity is handed a newspaper article, it will be this part of the newspaper from that day and then the article, which can range from this long to like this long. And I really like the look of that, but I also didn't want to do it for every single newspaper article, simply because one, it would take so long to source this every single time and to like save it and to match it up and everything like that. It was already long enough doing it for what I had to do it for. But then also because I've got articles that are super short. It's going to be like, this article is shorter and takes up less space than the actual title. And I knew if I did it this way for every single article, that would be taking up way too much paper and way too much space in this folder. So I decided to just do it for the really important things. And I think it makes it a little bit more special. making it just, as I said, the obituaries, the marriages, and any other big major articles, maybe like court cases and things like that, where I've decided this is important enough to actually include the title of the paper. And I really like seeing the actual title and how it appeared in the newspapers. And then obviously there's the other way I've done it, where it's just straight up and I've typed, you know, what it is. We just keep following along, and obviously, as you can see, I've got sticky tabs at the top here. These sticky tabs are my direct line. So we just keep going down through everyone. I'm not even sure where we're up to here. Oh, okay, so we've come back to Robert. So here we come back to Robert and their daughter Elizabeth, and then we come to Elizabeth's brother and my direct line, William. So this is William and Susanna, and I'm descended from their first son, Charles. So some different sources, obviously newspaper articles, some different sources here. This is the Molong General Cemetery here. This is the Anglican portion, and then this is the people who are buried here. I've actually visited these graves in person. This information was really helpful because it made it really easy to find where they were. So I've just, obviously this section of the book is only following William and Susanna, but I've highlighted the other rutters that are connected to them, to specifically William and Susanna. Then obviously Charles was their first son, so he's the next person in line, Charles and Emily. And you can see that they've both remarried, and so I've, you know, included both of them there. And I'm descended from Bertie here. So obviously you can see that I've sort of branched out the folder prior to this, but because I've just had information about all of the different people, because where I've branched it have been the family who have lived in a similar area. So they did have connections with one another. But for another branch of the family, say, might just choose to branch it off here and actually just go down, you know, up until this point, direct lines, and then here decide I'll go and follow Ernest, Frederick, Wally and Stella's lines on top of my great-grandfather. But yeah, it depends. But that, as I said, the way where I've chosen to branch it is just really dependent on each branch, the information I have and the connections that, you know, the family itself had and the connections that my current extended family have. So obviously we follow down Ernie and his family here, his son. Now, one of the things that I included and that I created for this is the Australian Electoral Roll Index. So if you live in Australia, you'll be aware of the electoral roll. Between 1930 and 1980, it came out every 1 to 4 years. And I say one year because in like the 1930s in particular, it pretty much came out every single year, which is great. But if you have an ancestor who was 21 in 1930 and lived well past 1980, you will have like 20, I want to say, electoral rolls. And your ancestor could have moved every other year, and therefore you have all of this really awesome information. But you could also have an ancestor who didn't move at like once in that entire time period, and you've got all of these electoral rolls that say the exact same thing. When I started doing my physical folders, first up I started printing all of them, and that was really silly because there was way too many and it was just very cluttered and you didn't need all that information. Then I chose to just do it where it was when they moved or they got a new job, which definitely helped cull the amount of paper that I had, but it was still just too much. So I came up with the index in which I put all of those electoral rolls onto one page, and I definitely try and make it stick to one page. So like, you know, sometimes the font's going to be smaller. I try to stick it to one page unless it's impossible, but I really liked being able to put, so I think there's like 12 years or something here, all on the one page. So this predominantly follows Ernest and Gertrude. And then down the bottom here, you will also see Mandy down the bottom here. That is their daughter. She would have been 18 in no, she would have been either 18 or 21. I don't recall when they changed legal age from 21 down to 18. But in 1980 she appeared on the roll as living with them. So she gets included on here. And we can just, we can follow where they've moved, their different occupations. And then obviously there's also the important like electoral roll information, the year, the division and subdivision, which annoyingly does really change because they changed how things were divided and subdivided, which is really annoying. The number on the electoral roll, I don't think this is really important, but I just included it anyway. And as you can see, there's gaps because some electoral rolls are really hard to read, and so I couldn't read the numbers. The full name given on the electoral roll, so their address, and if the address is the same as the subdivision, so this for example is 118 Prince Street in Orange, then I don't write like the town, but down here it's not 27 Briars Road, Mortlake. I'm reading this upside down, sorry. It's 27 Briars Road, Concord. Same down here. I can't even read that upside down. Just to save space, because I didn't want to be writing orange when it was orange kind of thing. But I really like this. Really would recommend. This document is actually part of my genealogy document bundle available on my website if you are interested. So let me just keep flipping. So this is an example of why I really like color coding. So this is my great-grandparents Bertie, Rata and Hannah Sharp, and I'm descended from their first daughter Lorna. She's my grandmother, and she's orange obviously, and that just simply means she now appears and that line continues on in the orange folder. I didn't want to have my grandparents, my parents and myself repeated across every single folder, because again that's just a lot of extra printing and pages that are taking up space that in this folder I could use for other branches, other people and things like that. And it just gets very repetitive when you've got a whole chunk in the middle of the folder that is just the same. So my grandparents, parents, myself and siblings and whatnot appear once in my maternal side and once in my paternal side. So the orange folder is where I appear on the paternal side of my family. You'll also see that there is this highlight here. As I said, this was the military section. So I'd list the conflict in which they served and their service number. And I just like highlighting them purple because I don't have a purple folder. I don't have a purple branch. I like highlighting them purple just to kind of make it easier to see that there's military service. But because I also actually have a separate military records folder where I put their full service file. Because just in this folder, I either include this certificate for World War II or there's a similar one for World War I as well. And Vietnam, because I have some Vietnam vets as well. Because like their military records obviously take up quite a lot of space, some of them quite long. So I like to be able to do that just to show that there's military service here and that their records are in, it's technically a black folder, but obviously I'm not going to highlight in black. So that's essentially what that's saying. There isn't a ton of photos obviously in this. I have a whole other box where I actually have family photos. But I do like to include some in here just to have photos in here. I think it's nice. And I always try to include where I can, and I've been trying to get around to putting in all of the headstone photos. This here is an oral history transcript of my second cousin talking about how my great-grandfather had a fear of frilled neck lizards. It's quite a funny story. So obviously I have the audio recording for that and now I've transcribed it so it's easier to consume. Most of this is just newspaper articles. They're one of my favorite sources and they're also the easiest to put in here to give a really good overview of a person. And I will just say, when I put these folders together in this new updated format, I did it right before a family reunion, so I was like scrambling to get it done before we left, and there's definitely like some sources missing and things like that. And obviously there's a section here where I've got records that I need filling. I've got my second cousin working on that for me because it's her branch of the family. So this is a good example of having newspaper articles that are super, super small. These are all little snippets from like the About People section of the newspaper, like the gossip columns essentially. All of these pretty much say like so-and-so has gone on holiday here, or so-and-so had visitors holidaying with them. This also includes bits about like, Corporal Easterbrook came back on break kind of thing, on service leave. Obviously some more oral history included in here. I was contemplating whether to include oral history, these transcripts, in their own separate folder, but it's definitely nice to have them in here so that they correspond with, they're in the location that corresponds with who they're talking about. I don't have too many of the actual transcripts. I have heaps of audio. I have hours upon hours of audio, but I have not transcribed them all. So I'm in the process of doing that as well. So obviously everything looks pretty much the same. You've got an electoral roll notice, some newspaper articles, maybe some war service, and maybe some photos. As I say, they're the main sources I've currently got printed out. And for the most part, sometimes the only sources I have for some people. Particularly in Australia, newspaper articles are super easy to search thanks to Trove. We're sort of also getting into an area where it can be a little bit harder to find records that are open and available for viewing. So here's an example of how the system, the ordering system works. So here we have Charles Henry Rudder, and you'll remember him because he was married to Emily England. I'll go back, hang on, all the way back here. So there's Charles, and here's Charles earlier on with his first wife, Emily, who is the parents of Bertie, my grandfather, great-grandfather, sorry. All of this has come and gone because we've followed all of these people down. We are now on to his second marriage with Teresa Thursa. She's got multiple names, to be quite honest. Slavin. And they had a son together. And so then we're on to like the sources with him, with Charles and Thursa and Roy. And then we have Roy. So like that's a little bit of an example of sort of how the system works. A little bit. What do we have here? William and Susanna, where are they? And then we go all the way back. So there's William and Caroline Dover, the son of William and Susanna. Here's William and Susanna. And there is William there because I was descended from Charles, the first child. So then we've gone through all of Charles's branch and I've exhausted that essentially. And then we're coming all the way back to their second son, William. And I think William, yeah, and then John. And then their fifth child, George. And then their sixth child, Frederick, who died when he was 21. So he had no children or anything, but he was killed in an accident. So that's why he has his own separate page, just because he had an interesting article about him. And then we have their last child, Emily. So that is a really good example of how that whole systeming works. So then I have a coloured divider, and that was all the whole Rudder section. That's the section I've done the most research on, and I've branched out the most. Then we have here So even though I'm only technically focusing on my direct line, I still wanted to include Thomas and Mary's other children, Thomas, Joseph and James, with their own records, so I could still record their information and their children. And really the only sources I'm at this point including are death notices, particularly also because one of the annoying things that I have found about this family is everyone had the same name, and it's been very difficult to confirm like which person they're talking about. Like there are several Thomases, there are several Johns, there are several Jameses. It's very freaking confusing. And each brother had named their kids the same thing, and their kids named their kids the same thing. So cousins and second cousins and third cousins all shared the same name. It's really annoying. So this here is a death notice for Mary, and that's all I've included. And then I skip ahead, or move on then I suppose, to John and Hannah. And I'm descended from the 8th child, Charles, and I continue on with Charles. I have not branched out yet. I don't know if I will ever branch out with these children in the folder, but they're there. So I think there's 2 different obituaries. I think there's John and Hannah's obituaries. So as I said, we skip down to Charles and his wife Mary Ann, and I'm descended from their first child, Edith. And I don't think I've actually done it in this folder, but I think the plan is I'm branching out with looking at all of Edith's siblings. So Edith is my 2 times great grandmother. She married Arthur Sharp, so that's where the Sharps come in at the back of this book. And I think the plan was I'm branching out with these children. I think I've only got Edith in here for now. So then I'm following this, obviously, all the sources for Charles and Mary, which is only death at this point. I think I'm meant to come back and add more to it. Obviously, family history isn't ever, you're never done, and you're always adding to it. Oh, I take that back. What have I done here? So for some reason, oh, right, okay, hang on, right. I just realized what I've done. So Edith, because she married Arthur Sharp, she actually comes down into the Sharp section further back. And as I said, I've branched off. So the next person here is actually Elizabeth, who is the second child. My God, it's been a while since I've opened this folder. And then I just follow Edith's siblings and their children down. And then we come back, so once we've exhausted all of her siblings, we come back down to Joseph Gosper, who is John Gosper's younger brother, and all their kids. And then James, the youngest, and their kids. And then, so fun fact, real fun fact, where are we? Fun fact. So Thomas and Mary obviously got together and had 4 kids, but Mary was previously with a guy called Richard Reynolds. They weren't married. He was another convict that came out on the 3rd Fleet with her, and she ended up having a son with him called Edward. So I've skipped, even though he's born first, he's not the direct line. So I've put him at the back, but he is a direct line, sort of, in the sense that Richard Reynolds, after being with Mary and having Edward and her leaving him for Thomas Gosper, Richard Reynolds married Sarah Elizabeth Sterling. Sarah and Richard had a daughter called Hannah. Hannah married John Gosper. John Gosper being the John Gosper, Thomas and Mary's son. So I have like double like Gosper convict connections here. So I've included this little bit at the back. Obviously, I needed to include Richard and Mary's relationship and their son, but it just also happened that Richard got with another convict and had another ancestor of mine, so she's at the back here as well. And then this is another excerpt from that book because he gets a little feature too. And then we come to the last part of this book, which is the Sharp section, so another little folder. And as you'll see, the highlighting is ever so slightly different for the 3 different sections. So this goes all the way back to Thomas Sharp and Anna Caldecott, whatever. I'm descended from Thomas, who is here. Thomas married Martha. I'm descended from James, who is here. This branch of the tree I have, I think, some of the least information about. And as again, when I put this folder together originally, I was in a rush to get it done. So there's things missing, and I do have to come back and add to it. So James and Elizabeth, so this James married Elizabeth, and this is an example of someone who had a lot of kids, although I actually think maybe the 19 kids. Some of them definitely died young, But I think there are some that I need to verify still. And I haven't highlighted it, but I meant to highlight Arthur along here. We have Arthur, so then we have Arthur and Edith. Edith being the daughter of Charles and Mary, who we saw in the previous section, and I thought I forgot to put her in. And then they had Hannah Dulcie, who married Bertie Rutter. So I've highlighted this wrong again, but he is then further, he's back, we saw him earlier, but I follow her siblings. So I hope you enjoyed that little bit of a flip through, and it has helped you see how I have recorded my family tree in physical form. As I said, I'm in the process of making all of my folders look like that, and also there are things I still need to add to those folders as well. And obviously family tree research is never complete, so I'm going to come across something in the future that I'm going to be really excited to put in this folder. So I might also find something that I'm excited to find but isn't necessarily folder worthy. Before you start asking, what do you consider folder worthy? Obviously that is just dependent from person to person, branch to branch, and researcher to researcher. You might find something that you find worthy of going in your physical folder. I might find the same document and think, not so much. And as I said, I've chosen to, make the tree very direct and then branch out at the bottom, rather than branching out super far back, because it gets so big and so complicated. And I want these folders to be super easy to pick up, no matter who you are, to look through. And then, I still obviously have all that other information about everyone else in the tree on my computer. It's still accessible, it's still easy to search through. It just makes these folders a little bit easier to use. And maybe down the track I might have a separate yellow folder that does look at all those people further back that is still important to know, but not necessarily something I want to be reaching for every single time. We'll see what happens. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments below. I'll try to answer them in the comments. If I get a lot of questions, or a lot of the same questions, I might do a blog post or another video. I don't really know. But yeah, just ask questions, and yeah, I think that is it. I feel like I've forgotten to do something, or show something, or say something, but I don't really know. Anyway, if I remember, and if I have to make another follow-up video with questions, to answer questions, I'll let you know then. As I said, there will be heaps of links for you guys to go check out in the comments. I would love to know what you've done in terms of making a physical family tree collection like this, or something similar, or what you've done physically. If you've posted photos somewhere, or you've got a blog post or a video, let me know, because I'd love to go check it out. I do really like seeing how other people do it, because it definitely gives me inspiration in how I could do things slightly differently, or what I could incorporate in my own collection. As I said, some of the things I've done with mine have been from what I've seen online of other people, and I might not have directly copied what they've done, but I've taken inspiration and fit it to how I perceive things, or how I want things to be perceived, or what I think looks good, etc, etc. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If there is any genealogy content that you would love for me to do in video form, please let me know, because I do definitely want to, 1, get back into making videos, and 2, post videos that are going to be helpful or insightful or interesting to you guys. So if you have a topic, let me know and I'll think about it. And if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, then definitely, 1, subscribe to this channel, in the really weird chance I might upload again somewhat soon, but also just follow me on my social media accounts. All the links are in the description below. I think that is it. Give this video a thumbs up, and enjoy the last few days of National Family History Month, and enjoy researching your own family history. And yeah, I will see you guys at some point with another video. Bye!